echoes of the unknown. The first time it happened, James was elbow deep in takeout containers, half listening to a documentary about deep-sea creatures. The sudden shrill ring sliced through his studio apartment like a knife. He froze, plastic fork hovering over cold low mine. His landline, a relic from his grandmother's estate gathering dust on the bookshelf, was blinking with an incoming call. "Who even knows this number?" he muttered, wiping sweet and sour sauce on his jeans. The display showed a string of repeating zeros, 000000000. Curiosity overrode caution. He picked up. Static crackled, then a voice emerged, a distorted mirror of his own. "Don't take the subway tomorrow." The line went dead. James stared at the receiver, pulse thrumming in his ears. A prank call, obviously. Yet at 8:17 a.m. the next morning, as he descended the subway stairs, his phone buzzed with a news alert: derailed train at 86th Street Station. Multiple injuries reported. The timestamp matched his would-be commute. 7 days later, the phone screamed again at 3:03 a.m. This time, the voice dripped with metallic urgency. "Check the gas leak." James laughed hoarsely. "I don't even have a..." Hiss. The line died. 2 minutes later, the carbon monoxide detector near his water heater shrieked to life. By the third call, avoid the black sedan on 5th Avenue, he'd started documenting everything in a leather-bound notebook. The warnings escalated in specificity: a falling construction beam, a tainted sushi roll from his usual lunch spot, a lightning strike precisely where he'd planned to photograph autumn foliage. Each near miss left him more unraveled. Sleep became fractured mosaics of shadowy corridors and ringing phones. It was the 6th call that changed everything. "Go to the Harrington building. Tonight." The voice now carried a wet, labored quality, as if the speaker were drowning in their own breath. "That place was condemned 20 years ago," James protested, fingers whitening around the receiver. "3rd floor archive room." "You'll understand." A coughing fit swallowed the last word. Rain needled James' face as he stood before the derelict structure, flashlight beam trembling across boarded windows. The Harrington building loomed like a rotten tooth against the storm-lit sky. Inside, mildew and decay clung to every surface. His footsteps echoed through corpse-like hallways until he found the archive room, its door slightly ajar, light bleeding through the crack. The room was a time capsule. Dust swirled air caught in his throat as his beam illuminated file cabinets labeled Project Echo, Temporal Anomalies, 1987-1992. Newspaper clippings detailed disappearances, local scientist vanishes during controversial experiment. 5 volunteers missing in time displacement trial. A shrill ring erupted from the corner. An identical rotary phone, its cord severed, sat atop a stack of yellow journals. James' blood turned to ice. The receiver lifted itself mid-air, hovering like a venomous snake. "Welcome home," his own voice chuckled through the earpiece, this time crystal clear and dripping with madness. The severed cord writhed like a dying serpent as the receiver floated toward James' face. Cold plastic pressed against his ear before he could scream. "You're late," the voice sighed, his voice, but warped by a grin too wide for any human mouth. "Took you 6 cycles to find the archives." "Pathetic, really." James recoiled, but an unseen force pinned him against a filing cabinet. Dust rained onto his shoulders as the phantom version of himself continued, each word dripping with condescension. Project Echo wasn't about time travel. It was about splitting. Like photocopying souls until the edges blur. A wet chuckle. They got 5 volunteers to fracture themselves across timelines. Then the machine hiccuped. A sudden flash blinded him, an overlapping vision of the room decades earlier. White-coated scientists scrambled as a chrome device resembling an MRI scanner vomited sparks. A man strapped to its core multiplied, his body flickering between 5 translucent versions, each screaming in dissonant octaves. The memory dissolved, leaving James gasping against the cabinet. The voice lowered to a conspiratorial whisper. "Now we play hide and seek across the cracks. You're my best candidate yet, smart enough to survive the warnings, desperate enough to keep chasing answers. A pause. But tonight's different, isn't it? You felt the shift when you entered this building. James had. The air tasted charged, as though reality itself were fraying at the edges. His watch now showed 2 conflicting times, both ticking backward. Look at the mirror, the voice commanded. The dust-caked window to his left rippled, transforming into a reflection not of the decaying room, but of a pristine laboratory. A version of himself in a lab coat stood frozen mid-scream, hands pressed against the glass from the other side. Behind him, the scanner device glowed crimson. That's iteration 4. He lasted 11 days before the paradox headaches liquefied his brain. The receiver clattered to the floor as the vision faded. Run along now, James. The building resets at dawn. Wouldn't want you trapped here, again. 4 hours earlier. Detective Alvarez squinted at the surveillance footage from James' apartment lobby. The timestamp read 2:47 a.m., precisely when the carbon monoxide detector had triggered. A grainy figure occupied the elevator, its face pixelated into abstraction. Every frame showed the same unnerving detail. The figure held a vintage rotary phone cradled like a newborn. 3rd time this month, Alvarez muttered to her partner, gesturing at the case board. Photos of James' notebook entries formed a spiderweb of connections, addresses circled in red, news clippings about avoided disasters, frantic sketches of a machine resembling a spider-legged coffin. Kids either orchestrating an elaborate hoax, the partner said, or we're about to reopen the Harrington files. Alvarez thumbed through a folder stamped classified. Inside, a 1992 memo warned, "Do not investigate disappearances linked to Project Echo. Contamination risk exceeds clearance level." Present moment. James stumbled into the storm, Harrington building groaning behind him. His phone buzzed with a new notification, a voicemail from his own number. The message contained only wet, rhythmic sounds, something heavy being dragged across concrete. He didn't notice the black sedan idling across the street until its headlights flared. The driver's face was a smudged void beneath a cabbie hat. A rear window rolled down, releasing a plume of frost into the rain. "Need a ride, Mr. Cole?" asked a woman's voice from the back seat. She held up a Polaroid, James himself, screaming soundlessly inside the archive room. The date stamped on the photo read November 12, 1992. The woman snapped her fingers before James could speak. The sedan's interior swallowed him whole, a cavernous space smelling of burnt copper and mothballs. Leather seats stretched impossibly far back, occupied by shadowy figures clutching mismatched objects, a pocket watch leaking black fluid, a child's doll with newspaper clippings for eyes, a bouquet of roses preserved in glass tiers. "We've been monitoring your progress," the woman said, lighting a cigarette that emitted no smoke. Her face defied focus, features shifting like a radio tuning between stations. One moment, she resembled a 1950s starlet, the next a hollow-cheeked teenager. Iteration 7, was it? No, wait, she plucked the Polaroid from his trembling hand. The image now showed James lying motionless in a hospital bed, surrounded by monitors displaying static. "Ah. You're still in the probationary phase." The car accelerated without engine noise. Through tinted windows, James saw the city melting, skyscrapers twisting into gnarled trees, streetlights becoming bioluminescent fungi. The driver's void face flickered with what might have been pity. Project Echo didn't fail, the woman continued. It succeeded catastrophically. When you fracture a soul across timelines, the pieces develop hunger. Your charming phone pal? That's iteration 3. Consumed 6 echoes of himself before we contained him in the Harrington's archive. She tapped ashes that never fell. You felt it, haven't you? The itch behind your sternum when you narrowly escaped death? That's your echo trying to merge. James' throat tightened. He recalled the subway near miss, how his chest had burned with something sharper than adrenaline. Tonight's excursion accelerated your degradation. The woman produced a handheld mirror. James' reflection wavered, revealing brief flashes of other faces beneath his skin, a middle-aged woman, a scarred child, an old man missing his lower jaw. Congratulations! You're now a walking paradox. Simultaneously, at the 14th precinct, Detective Alvarez froze as the projector flickered to life. The 1992 surveillance footage showed James Cole, age unchanged, arguing with scientists in the Harrington building lobby. "That's impossible," her partner whispered. "This tape's 30 years old." A technician rewound the film. There he was again, James in his modern-day leather jacket, pixelated but unmistakable, sprinting through the same corridor in a loop. Alvarez's desk phone rang. A distorted voice whispered coordinates before dissolving into dial tone. The numbers led to an unmarked warehouse where they found 17 rotary phones suspended in glass tanks, their cords knotted like umbilical veins. Beneath each tank lay a nameplate. James Cole Iteration 2. James Cole Iteration 5. James Cole Iteration 9. Back in the timeless sedan. The woman pressed a stethoscope to James' chest. Instead of a heartbeat, it amplified overlapping voices arguing in his own tone. "Can't let him find the machine. The third-floor ventilation shaft is the key. Kill her before she alerts the others." "Fascinating," the woman murmured. "Your echoes are coordinating." She yanked open the car door. They'd stopped inside the Harrington building's lobby, now restored to its 1990s grandeur. Scientists in radiation suits scrambled past without acknowledging them. "Why show me this?" James demanded. "Because Iteration 3 escaped his prison tonight." She pointed upward. A blood-stained figure crouched on the mezzanine, James' doppelganger, but with too many joints and eyes, like shattered televisions. "He'll hunt every version of you to consolidate power. Your choices are simple: help us trap him, or become his next meal." A phone rang shrilly from the lab depths. Not the rotary, this was a modern cell tone. James' own device displayed the dreaded zeros. He answered. "Don't trust them," gasped his voice, choked as if by barbed wire. "The machine, it's..." Iteration 3 leaped from the balcony, shrieking. The thing that had been James, but wasn't, landed with a wet crunch, its elongated fingers gouging marble tiles. James stumbled backward as the iteration unfurled to its full 8-foot height, vertebrae protruding like shark teeth through decaying skin. The woman's sedan vanished, leaving him trapped in 1992's Harrington building at the precise moment of the original experiment's collapse. "Run!" screamed his own voice through the still-active phone line. "The west stairwell leads to..." The sentence dissolved into static as Iteration 3 swiped at James' head. He ducked, feeling air ripple where his skull should have been. The building pulsed like a living thing as James fled. Walls bled between decades, one moment pristine lab corridors, the next the mold-infested ruin he'd first encountered. He nearly tripped over a 1990s-era scientist materializing mid-stride, the man's horrified face freezing as James passed through him like a ghost. 3 floors below, Detective Alvarez stepped through the warehouse's rusted doors, her flashlight beam catching the glass tanks containing James' iterations. The phones inside twitched as she approached, their cords lashing against containment like electrified eels. "Don't touch anything," her partner warned, but Alvarez had already spotted the journal floating in Tank 5. Waterlogged pages showed detailed sketches of the sedan woman's shifting face across different eras. The final entry read, "They're not rescuers. They're gardeners pruning the timeline tree." When an echo grows too strong. A phone rang behind them. Not the tank prisoners, Alvarez's own cell. The caller ID showed James' number, but the voice belonged to a sobbing child. "Please make it stop. The machine is hungry again." Within the temporal storm, James skidded into a laboratory where 2 realities overlaid, a decaying present and the 1992 disaster in progress. Scientists screamed in silent slow motion as the central machine tore a volunteer apart atom by atom. James' own reflection in the observation window showed 5 overlapping versions, each trying to dominate the others. The pursuing iteration paused, its too many eyes fixated on the malfunctioning device. Yes, it hissed, the splitter remembers. It began inputting coordinates on a control panel that flickered between eras. James' phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, a photo of Alvarez standing in front of his tank-bound duplicates. The message read, "She dies in 8 minutes. Your move." The machine hummed to life, Iteration 3's laughter warping into a sonic assault. James' vision tripled as 3 possible futures branched before him. Destroy the machine, risk collapsing all realities. Merge with the iteration, become the monster hunting him. Alter the 1992 experiment, erase himself from existence. A 4th option materialized, the sedan woman's voice whispering through a ventilation shaft. There's always a back door, Mr. Cole. Check the founder's portrait. Detective Alvarez's crucible. The warehouse phones began shrieking in unison. Alvarez's partner collapsed, blood trickling from his ears as the cacophony intensified. The tanks cracked, spilling briny water that pooled into a single directive, stop him before full convergence. Her phone lit up with live footage, James standing before the machine, Iteration 3 inputting commands. A location tag placed them beneath the current warehouse. As Alvarez descended a hidden stairwell, she passed through a membrane of cold static and emerged in 1992's underground lab. Convergence. James found the founder's portrait behind shredded insulation, Dr. Eleanor Voss, the sedan woman's true face. Her eyes were X-ray slides showing the machine's blueprints. A hidden lever behind the frame opened a chute to the core. Iteration 3 spun, sensing betrayal. Traitorous echoes must be. James jumped into the chute as the machine detonated. He fell through decades, past Alvarez aiming her service weapon at the 1992 machine, past his own childhood bedroom where a rotary phone sat unused on a dresser, past the infinite moment of his first temporal split. He landed hard in the warehouse's present-day underground facility. The core machine pulsed before him, its surface crawling with phantom hands. Alvarez appeared through a rippling portal, gun trained on him. "Don't!" James shouted. "It feeds on conflict." Too late. Her bullet struck the machine. Reality stuttered. The choice. Iteration 3 materialized, now fused with shards of other echoes, a grotesque amalgam of every James that ever was. The warehouse trembled as the timeline tree began to burn. The sedan woman appeared beside Alvarez, finally corporeal. "End it by merging," she urged James. "Become the singularity." James' phone rang one last time. His own voice, calm and whole, spoke, "There's another way. Let her shoot the core again." As Iteration 3 lunged, James threw himself into the machine's heart. "Now, Alvarez!" The gunshot echoed across timelines. Epilogue. Rain tapped against a new grave in Pine Grove Cemetery. Detective Alvarez placed a rotary phone receiver atop the headstone marked James Cole, Iteration Final. Across town, a teenage girl received her first smartphone. As she activated it, the screen flashed "Welcome Home" before resetting. Somewhere beyond time, a familiar voice whispered warnings only she could hear. The cycle refined itself. The ghostly audience. The stage lights buzzed like dying wasps as Clara adjusted her velvet corset. A bead of sweat slid down her spine despite the theater's glacial air. Opening night always did this to her, the dry mouth, the trembling hands, the irrational certainty that tonight would be the night everything went wrong. Places. Director Marlowe's voice cracked through the dusty wings. Clara stepped into the amber glow, her patent leather shoes sticking slightly to the warped floorboards. The curtain rose with a moth-eaten sigh, revealing what should have been rows of plush red seats. Should have been. Her breath hitched. The house sat empty. Not a single ticket holder occupied the Art Deco auditorium, yet as she delivered Juliet's first lines, thunderous applause erupted from the void. Hands clapping in perfect unison. A standing ovation of shadows. She faltered, squinting at the vacant orchestra section where the sound seemed to originate. "Your line, Clara." Tybalt hissed through gritted teeth, his sword trembling during their choreographed duel. The applause died as suddenly as it began. Clara's next words echoed too loudly in the hollow space. When the phantom ovation returned during Mercutio's death scene complete with whoops and whistles, 3 cast members froze mid-sprawl. Backstage during intermission, the company clustered like frightened sheep. Makeup artist Elena crossed herself repeatedly, her coal-stained fingers leaving smudged crosses on her lab coat. "They say Teatro della Morte was built on a plague pit," she whispered. "Workers found bones in the foundation last month." Lighting technician Jamal scrolled through his phone, face illuminated ghostly blue. "Check this out." He turned the screen toward the group. Security camera footage showed their current dressing room empty. The timestamp read 3:17 a.m. As they watched, makeup brushes levitated and began applying rouge to invisible faces. Clara's reflection in the vanity mirror paled. "That's my station." The second act descended into chaos. Blood-red rose petals materialized mid-air during the balcony scene. A cold breath sighed along actors' napes when they forgot lines. During Juliet's fake death, real coffin nails rained from the rafters, embedding themselves in the stage like accusing fingers. When the final curtain fell, the ovation shook the crystal chandeliers. Dust sifted down like grey snow as Clara peered through the peephole. Still no audience. Just the lingering scent of funeral lilies and something darker beneath the metallic tang of old blood. Stage manager Carlos found the first note pinned to Juliet's tomb prop with a rusted hairpin. The paper felt disturbingly moist, the elegant cursive glowing faintly phosphorescent. "Encore. Your tragedy nourishes us." The finale approaches. Clara's hand shook as she read the postscript PS. "We so enjoyed Mother's performance in 1944. Her screams were divine." Behind her, Elena screamed. Clara turned to see the makeup mirror bleeding oily black tears, the glass rippling like water. A pale hand emerged, clutching a sepia photograph. The 1944 cast portrait showed their exact double standing before a smoldering theater, faces contorted in silent screams. Somewhere in the dark, a seat creaked. The photograph slipped from Clara's fingers, fluttering to the floor like a dying moth. Elena's screams dissolved into choked sobs as the spectral hand retreated into the mirror, its surface hardening back to glass with an audible snap. Jamal knelt to retrieve the image, his smartphone flashlight trembling over the faded faces. "Look at their costumes," he breathed. "Same production. Same staging. Even the..." He trailed off, thumb hovering over a figure in the foreground. The 1944 Clara wore a lace collar darkened by what could only be bloodstains, her eyes 2 burned holes in the photograph. Carlos kicked open the emergency exit, flooding the backstage area with sulfur yellow streetlight. "Everyone out! Now!" But the doorway led nowhere. Instead of the damp Milan alley they'd entered through, the cast found themselves staring at the theater's own lobby, a funhouse mirror reflection where the Art Deco furnishings lay draped in cobwebs thick as burial shrouds. A grand piano in the corner played a discordant rendition of Dies Irae, its keys depressed by invisible hands. Clara's throat tightened. "We're trapped." The lights flickered. When they steadied, fresh graffiti glistened wetly on the lobby walls. Phrases in a dozen languages crawled upward like vines, "Finish the show" in English, "DA with grave IWA with acute NCHX" in Mandarin, "Termina LA Opera" in Spanish. The red paint smelled coppery, fresh. Director Marlowe emerged from the shadows, his normally immaculate hair standing in wild tufts. "There will be no cancellations," he barked, though his left eye twitched uncontrollably. "The critics are watching. The world is watching." "Critics?" Jamal held up his phone. "No signal. No internet. We can't even." A loud pop interrupted him. The smartphone screen cracked diagonally, black liquid oozing from its core. The viscous substance formed words on the marble floor, and no spoilers. As midnight approached, the company reluctantly prepared for what they dubbed the midnight matinee. Clara discovered her dressing room transformed. The vanity mirror now reflected a 1940s starlet's quarters, complete with a rotary phone ringing insistently. When she lifted the receiver, cold static assaulted her ear, followed by a child's sing-song voice, 7 performers, 7 flames, 7 secrets to exhume. The line went dead. Through the mirror's surface, Clara watched her doppelganger from the photograph slowly mouth the words, "Find the libretto." Act 3 commenced with technical failures. Stage lights exploded in showers of blue sparks. The fog machine produced thick black smoke that reeked of charred flesh. During Juliet's tomb scene, Clara lay paralyzed as something icy and insubstantial pressed against her, not Tybalt's actor, but a presence that whispered directly into her marrow, "Better than your mother, but still inadequate." When the phantom audience began singing along with the death scene aria, hundreds of voices harmonizing in perfect pitch, teenager Chloe from the chorus fainted. They carried her to what should have been the costume department, but the racks now displayed 1940s fashions reeking of mothballs and decay. A vintage radio crackled to life, broadcasting a newsreel in clipped Italian. Tragedy at Teatro della Morte as fire claims 7 lives. Arson suspected. Authorities report peculiar details, all victims found wearing costumes despite no scheduled performance. The broadcast dissolved into white noise. Carlos pointed a shaking finger at the radio's glowing dials. That's today's date. October 19th. Same as the photograph, Jamal noted. His hands had developed an alarming tremor. 79 years to the day. Clara's corset suddenly constricted as realization struck. We're the 7th cast. There's 7 of us. Elena made a keening noise. The makeup artist's reflection no longer matched her movements. Mirror Elena stood perfectly still, smiling with blackened teeth. Real Elena's scream came out muffled, as though something had stuffed rags down her throat. The final note of the opera hung rotting in the air. No curtain call. No exit. Just the growing sense of being watched from every shadowed corner. A new message awaited them in the orchestra pit, scrawled in ashes across sheet music. Encore tonight. Final performance. No understudies. Beneath this, in shaky letters, "He knows what you did." As they debated burning the cursed theater to the ground, director Marlowe produced a revolver from his briefcase, an antique thing that shouldn't have contained live ammunition. The shot he fired into the ceiling left a smoking hole that wept plaster dust. The show, he panted, pupils dilated to black pools, must transcend. Something had clearly infected the director. His left sleeve bulged unnaturally, as though the arm beneath had grown extra joints. When Clara suggested they barricade themselves in the lobby, Marlowe's head rotated a full 180 degrees with a wet crunching sound. No alterations to the script, he intoned in a voice not quite his own. The patrons demand authenticity. Now truly terrified, the cast scattered. Clara and Jamal fled through the trapdoor beneath the stage, descending into the theater's bowels. Their flashlight beams revealed catacombs lined with bone-filled alcoves the plague pit urban legend spoke of. But these remains seemed recent. A skull still wearing stage makeup. A ribcage draped in modern denim. Clara! Jamal's voice cracked as he illuminated a section of wall. Countless names had been carved into the stone, each accompanied by a date. The list ended with their own names. Chloe's entry already bore tonight's date, the stone around it still dusty from recent engraving. Above the macabre registry, a fresco depicted 7 figures burning on a stage. The painting shifted when stared at directly, flames writhed, mouths opened in silent screams. Clara's own painted likeness turned its head to watch them, charred lips forming words, "The libretto holds the key." A cold draft carried the scent of burning hair. Somewhere above, Elena screamed again. This time, the sound cut off abruptly. The flashlight beam trembled across the ossuary walls as Clara ran her fingers over the freshly carved names. Her own inscription glistened with mineral dampness, the date field blank but hungry. Jamal's choked breathing echoed too loudly in the cramped space. "They're herding us," he whispered. "Like cattle to slaughter." A muffled thump sounded above. Dust sifted through the trapdoor cracks as something heavy dragged itself across the stage. Clara pressed her ear to the cold stone. Faint sobbing filtered down Elena's voice, but distorted, as if multiple people were crying through her throat. Libretto, Clara muttered, swinging her light across the catacombs. The mirror said to find the libretto. Their beams converged on a rusted metal box wedged between skeletons. Inside lay a leather-bound script swollen with moisture. As Clara lifted it, the book pulsed like a diseased heart. Pages flipped autonomously to Act V, Scene 2, a scene not in their modern adaptation. The dialogue dissolved into manic scribbles, except for one underlined passage. Truth's flame may yet illuminate this darkened stage, but 7 candles must burn to purge the player's rage. Jamal exhaled sharply. 7 candles. 7 of us. You don't think? A child's laughter echoed through the tunnels. They spun to see a pale figure vanish around a bend, its outline shimmering like old film projection. Without discussion, they pursued it, their path marked by increasingly fresh remains of wristwatch still ticking, a half-melted water bottle, modern artifacts among the ancient bones. The tunnel spilled into an underground chapel. 7 stone pews faced a crumbling altar where a burnt crucifix hung upside down. Upon the altar lay Elena's makeup case, its contents arranged with funeral precision. The largest powder brush stood upright in a mound of ashes, flagpole for a tiny flag cut from human skin. Clara's flashlight died. Jamal's beam revealed what the darkness had concealed. 7 figures sat in the pews. Their charred faces turned in unison, eye sockets glowing faintly blue. The 1944 cast. The central spectre raised a skeletal hand. Its jaw unhinged, releasing a swarm of flies that formed words in the air, "Finish the show properly." As the flies dispersed, realization dawned. They don't want a tragedy, Clara breathed. The original cast died thinking they'd failed. They need closure. A thunderous crash shook the chapel. Dust rained down as the ceiling cracked. Through the fissure, they glimpsed the main theater's chandelier swinging violently. Director Marlowe's distorted voice boomed through the opening, "No rewrites. No alterations." They fled back through catacombs now throbbing with unnatural heat. The walls sweated viscous black fluid that formed arrows pointing stageward. Reluctant but compelled, they emerged beneath the stage just as Chloe's scream pierced the air. The youngest chorus member floated 10 feet above the boards, suspended by invisible wires. Her limbs jerked in marionette motions as she forcibly reenacted Juliet's death scene. Blood trickled from her nostrils where ghostly strings pierced the flesh. The phantom audience's applause shook the theater, hungry and relentless. "Stop this!" Clara hurled the libretto onto the stage. The book burst open, pages fanning wildly until settling on the corrupted scene. "We'll perform your version. Just let her go." Silence. Chloe dropped like a sack of bones. As Jamal rushed to check her pulse, the spectral figures materialized in the front row, translucent but clearer now. Women in 1940s evening gowns with fire-scarred faces. Men in tuxedos fused to their bodies by molten buttons. A child holding charred teddy bear. Director Marlowe staggered from the wings, his left arm now a twisted thing of bone shards and piano wire. "I'll not allow," he rasped, but the ghostly child raised a hand. Marlowe's body seized, collapsing into a pile of disconnected joints. The libretto pages glowed. Clara approached the manuscript, her reflection shimmering in its ink-black margins. The rewritten scene demanded shocking revelations, confessions of arson, declarations of innocence, a plea for remembrance. Chandelier chains, Jamal noted, squinting at the stage directions. It mentioned releasing the chandelier chains during the epilogue. Above them, the massive crystal fixture creaked. Clara suddenly understood not just a prop, but the original murder weapon. The chandelier that had crushed the 1944 audience during their final bow. As surviving cast members gathered, some bleeding, all terrified, Clara distributed candles from the altar. "We light these during the truth scene. All 7 flames." Carlos hesitated. "And if we refuse?" The answer came via the grand piano slamming shut on his fingertips. He screamed agreement. The final performance began at 3:17 a.m. Phantom attendees materialized fully now, occupying every seat. Their burned hands clapped in unison, skin crackling like parchment. Clara delivered rewritten lines with trembling conviction. "We did not perish in flame by accident, but by one man's venomous pride." The theater trembled. A spectral figure materialized in the spotlight, the 1944 director, his face a melted mask. He pointed an accusing finger at his modern counterpart's remains. Carlos ignited his candle. "Forced us to perform during the bombing." One by one, cast members revealed buried truths through the script's guided admissions. With each confession, a ghostly patron dissolved into wisps of smoke. The chandelier chains groaned. When Clara's turn came, she faced her own doppelganger in the front row. "You weren't inadequate," she declared. "Your art deserved better than becoming his monument." The libretto burst into white flames. As the last candle flared, the chandelier plummeted. Crystals exploded like ice shards, piercing nothing yet everything. The ghost sighed as one a sound of release before dissolving into dawn light filtering through boarded windows. The explosion of light left after images dancing in Clara's vision. She blinked rapidly, hand still raised against the phantom chandelier's collapse. But when her sight cleared, the theater stood intact. No shattered crystals. No smoldering wreckage. Morning light bled through cracks in the boarded windows, painting the auditorium in dusty gold. The ghosts were gone. Jamal crouched nearby, cradling Chloe's unconscious form. The teenager's nostrils no longer bled, though twin scars marked where spectral strings had pierced her flesh. Across the stage, Carlos stared at his hands, the fingers crushed by the piano now moved freely, as though the injury had never occurred. "They're satisfied?" Elena whispered. The makeup artist's reflection finally mirrored her movements, though her eye still held a fractured quality, like someone peering through frosted glass. A hollow clang made them jump. The libretto lay closed at center stage, its leather cover now pristine. When Clara approached, she found the pages blank except for a single epilogue written in familiar 1940s cursive. "Your truth has quenched our thirst." The curtain falls. But theaters, like graves, are never truly empty. The backstage door creaked open, revealing the real Milan alleyway slick with dawn rain. The stench of sewage never smelled sweeter. As they stumbled into the light, the theater's marquee flickered once behind them. Clara glanced back, catching a fleeting glimpse of letters rearranging themselves. Closed for renovation. But renovations never came. 3 months later, Clara stood before the same theater under crisp autumn sunlight. The Art Deco facade now boasted fresh paint, the lobby converted into an espresso bar. No one mentioned the vanished cast from the failed experimental production. No one recalled director Marlowe at all. Yet something tugged at her nightly, the way shadows lengthened peculiarly at 3:17 a.m., or how her shower steam sometimes formed applauding silhouettes. Tonight, the compulsion proved irresistible. The emergency exit alarm had been disconnected. Clara slipped inside, guided by moonlight filtering through the new skylights. The renovated auditorium smelled of citrus polish and false security. Her footsteps echoed as she approached the stage, now stripped to its concrete bones. "You felt it too?" Clara whirled. Jamal leaned against a scaffolding tower, his face gaunt in the blue dark. "They're not gone. Just waiting." A pressure shift made their ears pop. The temperature plummeted. On the far wall, the new drywall bubbled and peeled, revealing the old plague pit registry beneath. Their names remained carved in stone, the dates now reading that night's date. Again. It's cyclical, Clara realized aloud. Every generation. The theater hungers. A rotary phone rang. They found it in the construction office, a relic someone should have demolished. Clara lifted the receiver, greeted by a child's giggle and 7 clicks like turning combination locks. Jamal checked his smartphone. 3:17 a.m. Above them, the new LED lights buzzed to life. Through the unfinished ceiling, they glimpsed movement in the renovated balcony. Patrons materialized not as burned specters, but ordinary-looking souls. A businessman checking his watch. A teenager chewing gum. A mother shushing her child. All transparent. All staring hungrily at the stage. The construction radio crackled, breaking news, multiple reports of a mass disappearance at Teatro della Morte's reopening gala. Clara gripped Jamal's arm. It's already begun again. With them. She nodded at the new ghosts. And us? A program fluttered from the rafters, dated tonight. The cast list showed their names beside unfamiliar roles. Jamal's character died in Act 2. Clara's in Act 5. From the void beneath the stage came 3 slow claps. Then 100. Then thousands. The hungry applause crescendoed as the emergency exits sealed themselves. Streaming my own death. The first notification arrived at 3:33 a.m., a single-digit timestamp burned into Lara Monroe's sleep-deprived retinas. Her phone buzzed against the marble bathroom counter as she dabbed concealer under bloodshot eyes. The vanity mirror reflected what her 2.8 million followers adored: honey blonde waves, a constellation of freckles across ski-jump nose, lips perpetually glossed for impromptu selfies. Another spam link, she muttered, thumbnail hovering over the unfamiliar URL. At deathcast_live234. 0 followers. 0 posts. Bio blank except for coordinates matching her exact latitude-longitude. Her manager's warning echoed through the fog of melatonin gummies: never click suspicious links after the swatting incident, babe. But the thumbnail froze her mid-swipe, a figure in a peach satin robe identical to hers crumpled on bathroom tiles, blonde hair fanned out like a broken halo. Camera shake. Someone breathing heavily off-screen. A silver Rolex Daytona, her father's deathbed gift, glinting on the corpse's wrist. Lara's own watch ticked louder as the live counter updated, viewer 1. Deepfake, she whispered to her reflection, fingers moving before rationality intervened. The stream expanded to full screen just as the camera panned upward, revealing the victim's face. Her face. Not the filtered version from today's GRWM video, but raw flesh, pale eyelids half closed, mascara smeared like oil spills. A trickle of black fluid leaked from nostrils to pool on the Helem monogrammed bath mat she'd unboxed yesterday. The screen went dark. When her ring light flickered back on, the bathroom mirror showed 2 figures where there should be 1. Lara spun around, phone clattering into the sink. Empty shower. Closed window. Her Alexa routine announced the time in that smooth British voice, 3:34 a.m. Exactly 1 minute since the stream began. She forced laughter for the non-existent camera. Real cute, Drew. I know you're pissed about the breakup, but this? Her ex's film school obsession with practical effects suddenly seemed less charming. The notification chimed again as she towel-dried her phone. Same account. New stream scheduled for tomorrow night. 3:33 a.m. For 18 hours, Lara almost convinced herself it was an elaborate hoax. Until the second broadcast began precisely as the digital clock above her studio lights flipped to 3:33 a.m. This time, the camera followed her doppelganger through a replica of her Culver City apartment. Same IKEA furniture she'd assembled live last Christmas. Same good vibes, only a neon sign flickering above the corpse version of herself lying on the Persian rug, head twisted at impossible angles, neck mottled with bruises shaped like fingerprints. Lara's actual hands flew to her unmarked throat. The live stream's timestamp glowed red in the corner, October 21st. Tomorrow's date. When her garbage disposal jammed during Thursday's midnight snack prep, she didn't scream. Not when the repairman found blonde hairs wrapped around the blades. Not when he asked why she dumped a whole wig down the drain. Because she owned no wigs. The third broadcast arrived not at 3:33 a.m., but during her sponsored makeup tutorial. Lara's phone vibrated against the ring light stand as she blended highlighter across a fake subscriber's cheekbone. The studio audience of 42,000 live viewers didn't see her grip tighten on the beauty blender when the notification appeared at deathcast_live234, live now. Her assistant MIA frowned at the monitor. We're trending in Toronto. Keep going. Lara's thumb moved on autopilot. The stream loaded in a minimized window beneath her smiling face. This time, the camera hovered ceiling level in her walk-in closet. Her corpse doppelganger lay beneath the Gucci shoe rack, left hand severed at the wrist. The diamond self-made ring she designed herself glinted inside the Rolex's torn-open watch face, gears replaced by human molars. Earth to Lara? MIA hissed. The live stream timestamp burned October 22nd. Tonight. She ended the tutorial 13 minutes early, claiming menstrual cramps. Her comments section exploded with conspiracy theories before MLA could disable replies. At 8:17 p.m., forensic analyst Ethan Cross arrived, her last rational decision before the unraveling. The cybersecurity expert turned true crime podcaster had slid into her DMs after the first stream. Whatever this is, he'd written, it's not human. Now he knelt by her closet's motion sensor UV light revealing what her cleaning service had missed, child-sized handprints in albumin glue crawling up the mirrored walls. These weren't here yesterday, Lara whispered. Ethan's GoPro documented everything. The glue's used in practical effects. But these? He measured a print smaller than his palm. The ridge patterns are inverted. Like photo negatives of fingerprints. Her Apple Watch buzzed. Doorbell cam notification. The infrared feed showed a delivery man holding orchids, her mother's favorite funeral flowers. Except her mother had died in the 2018 Uber crash. Except the delivery date on the tag read October 22nd, 2023. Tomorrow. When they opened the door, only a VHS tape remained. Ethan's breath clouded in the suddenly freezing hallway. That's a Sony DVM-60P RO. Discontinued in 1997. The static that bled from Lara's 8K television smelled like burnt hair. Grainy footage showed her teenage self at the Jersey Shore house, braiding her mother's hair 3 hours before the crash. A figure blurred in the background window, skeletal hands pressed against glass, eye sockets crawling with horseshoe crabs. Rewind, Ethan demanded. But the VHS player displayed zero input. The tape in its tray had disintegrated into black salt. At 2:49 a.m., Lara stood vigil by the motionless closet. Ethan scoured the dark web for a deathcast_live 234. Her security system logged 14 attempted breaches from IP addresses matching abandoned morgues. The Rolex's second hand stuttered. 3:33 a.m. No notification came. Instead, her smart fridge printed a receipt, 1x human femur bone, crushed, 2x ocular fluid, expired. Suggested wine pairing, 1945 Chateau Mouton Rothschild. When she laughed, the sound echoed a beat too late. The silence broke at 4:17 a.m. with a wet crunch from the kitchen. Lara's bare feet recoiled from the floorboards, warm, sticky, and humming with static. Ethan's laptop glowed on the counter, its screen fractured by a single sentence repeating in 72 points impact font, "They always peek behind the curtain." Beneath the sink, the garbage disposal growled. Something pale swirled in the drain's mouth. "Don't." Ethan gripped her wrist as she reached for the disposal switch. His sleeve rode up, revealing scar tissue in perfect bite mark arcs. "It wants you to see. It's my blood down there, isn't it?" Lara wrenched free. The switch clicked. The blade screamed. Up came strands of honey blonde hair entwined with seaweed. A single molar clattered into the stainless steel basin. Ethan palmed it, nostrils flaring. Brackish water. Decay pattern suggests 8 years submerged. Lara's knees buckled. Her mother's Tesla had plunged into Raritan Bay. They'd never recovered the teeth. Ethan's GoPro died as he spoke. There's a pattern. In 1983, 6 Milwaukee women received VHS tapes showing their drownings before Lake Michigan claimed them. In 2009, a Tokyo blogger, he hesitated. She streamed her own apartment fire 12 hours before the arson. You've seen this before. Lara's voice flattened. Not this exact thing. He unzipped his bag, revealing Polaroids of a gutted bookstore. My sister ran a true crime blog. 7 days before her accident, she received a first-edition Malleus Maleficarum with annotations in human blood. The live stream started 3 days later. The confession hung between them as Lara's smart bulbs dimmed. Her YouTube dashboard flickered to life on the wall-mounted TV, analytics graphs morphing into a fever chart of her vital signs. Subscriber count overwritten with a plummeting life expectancy percentage, 43%. 22%. 7%. A notification chimed in triplicate. At deathcast_live234, scheduled, October 23, 3:33 a.m. Preview image, Lara's reflection in a shattered iPhone screen, mouth sewn shut with fishing wire. We need older records. Ethan shouldered his bag. There's an archive at the Santa Monica Library that... No, Lara gripped the Rolex, its hands now spinning counterclockwise. We're staying until sunrise. Then you're gone. He didn't argue. They drank overpriced alkaline water facing each other in the breakfast nook, backs to no walls. At 6:02 a.m., the security system logged a delivery drone depositing a vacuum-sealed package in her mailbox. Return address, Monroe Family Mausoleum, Plot 14. Inside lay her mother's decomposed iPhone, seaweed still clinging to its cracked screen. The last voicemail played when Lara pressed home. Lara Bear? The GPS says I'm on the bridge, but the water's, oh God, it's inside the car. The doors won't, a wet gurgle cut through the recording. Don't watch the message cut off. Ethan froze. This was sent today. He pointed to the metadata. October 23rd. 9:14 a.m. Outside, dawn remained stubbornly absent. The Santa Monica Library's underground archive smelled of irradiated paper and paranoia. Fluorescent lights buzzed like dying flies above row Z13, paranormal phenomena and unclassified events. Ethan's flashlight beam trembled across leather-bound ledgers as Lara wiped seawater from her mother's iPhone. Here. He heaved a 1912 municipal record onto the steel table. Page 237. The entry detailed a silent film star's demise, complete with newsreel stills. Clara Bowen, 24, had received 30 seconds of celluloid showing her trampled by horses at the Santa Anita racetrack. The film arrived 9 days before her death, via a courier who dissolved into saltwater upon delivery. Lara's finger traced Clara's face in the grainy photograph. Same cheekbone structure. Same. She hesitated. Same Rolex? Ethan pointed to the wristwatch in Clara's 1912 portrait. Except Rolex didn't make women's models until 1927. Their breath fogged suddenly. The thermostat read 72 degrees Fahrenheit, but Lara's Apple Watch showed 43 degrees Fahrenheit and dropping. A water stain spread across the ceiling tiles above them, forming a perfect eye. Ethan unrolled a 1947 police report with surgeon-like precision. Margaret Cole, radio host, received a wax cylinder recording of her own on-air heart attack 6 days in advance. Autopsy found seawater in her lungs. She died in downtown Chicago. A cold droplet hit Lara's neck. She looked up as the water stain blinked. Focus. Ethan slapped down an 1830s broadsheet. Woodcut illustrations showed a printer's apprentice surrounded by floating lead type. Samuel Gray received a pamphlet written in his own blood typesetting, predicting he'd be crushed under a steam press. Drowned in Boston Harbor despite never visiting the coast. Lara's phone lit up with a calendar alert, 3:33 p.m. sponsorship call with Sleepwell mattress. Except she'd cancelled all meetings. The screen fractured into pixels rearranging themselves, a live counter reading viewers 2,803,441. Ethan gripped her shivering wrist. It's evolving. Early cases took days between warning and death. You're getting hours. The archive door creaked open. No footsteps. A book cart materialized beside them, bearing a single volume, Technological Manifestations of Marine-Based Precognition, a study by Dr. Eleanor Monroe, 1946-1983. Lara's blood turned to brine. That's my grandmother's name. The book fell open to a dog-eared page. Handwritten marginalia screamed in her grandmother's looping script, the drowned god communicates through new eyes. First Silverite, then Marconi, now Zuckerberg. We made it hungry. Ethan photographed the text just as sprinklers erupted with salt water. The fire alarm remained silent. Run. He shoved the book into his bag as pages swirled into a liquid vortex. Lara's phone streamed live footage of this exact moment from a ceiling-mounted perspective, 3 seconds ahead of reality. They burst into daylight to find the parking lot underwater. Pacific waves lapped at BMW bumpers. A dead horseshoe crab clung to Lara's windshield wiper, its carapace etched with the YouTube logo. Her mother's iPhone rang. Caller ID, Dad. He'd been cremated in 2016. The iPhone screen cracked under Lara's grip as waves sloshed against her ankles. Ethan waded toward his Jeep, shouting something about coastal tsunamis. But the caller ID pulsed, Dad, and the rational world dissolved. She answered. Static breathed against her ear, thick with the scent of her childhood bedroom, linseed oil from her father's easel, nicotine from his late-night confessionals with the canvas. When the voice came, it was both his and not, a chorus of drowned throats gargling through a single vocal cord. You broke the chain, Lara Bear. Ethan yanked the phone away. It melted in his palm, screen curling like burnt parchment to reveal a brass locket beneath, the twin heart design her father had commissioned for her 5th birthday. Inside, a family photo she'd never seen, her grandmother ankle-deep in surf, shaking hands with a figure made of wet camera film. The contract, Ethan whispered. The locket's inner rim glowed with microscopic text, Monroe Media Holdings LLC. Terms, 100 years of prosperity in exchange for quarterly transmissions. Signed Eleanor Monroe and the Drowned Eye, 1947. Lara's studio lights exploded across the city. 3:33 a.m. to final broadcast. Her YouTube dashboard auto-streamed from 7 cameras she'd never installed. 4.1 million viewers watched as Lara's doppelganger staggered through the flooded library parking lot, clutching the locket to a chest riddled with barnacles. Don't look. Ethan tackled her behind a submerged Prius as the livestream's Lara approached their hiding spot. But the entity had perfected its mimicry. This Lara bled from eyes shaped like cathode ray tubes, teeth replaced by tiny SIM cards. Her final monologue echoed through their phones simultaneously. Grandma sold our reflection to the oldest hunger. Every viral video, every trending tag, we fed it attention instead of flesh. But you ignored the terms, little broadcaster. The corpse pointed to Lara's Rolex, now counting backward from 10 o'clock. No more loopholes. Finish the transmission or become the feast. Ethan pressed the dripping contract into her hands. Seawater-proof ink outlined the penalty clause. If the designated heir refuses curation duties, all previous offerings are forfeit. The feast commences at sunrise. Her phone buzzed with a notification from beyond the grave, at Eleanor Monroe_official had uploaded a 1947 unboxing video. Grandma Eleanor unwrapped a human tongue preserved in resin. Today's sponsor is Hereditary Obligation. Lara's subscribers began commenting in dead languages. Choice. The archive book floated atop the brackish water, open to a ritual page. Ethan read aloud, voice breaking. To satisfy the drowned eye's appetite, the curator must publicly sacrifice a narrative of equal value to their accumulated reach. Suggested offerings, a firstborn's memory, a spouse's autonomy, or Lara finished, or stream your own unmaking in perpetuity. Her studio lights pulsed on the horizon. The entity's shadow stretched across Los Angeles, a silhouette with too many joints, its single eye splitting into a million pixelated sub-eyes. Ethan gripped her shoulders. There's another way. My sister's notes mentioned her. The countdown hit midnight. All screens, phones, billboards, car consoles, froze on Lara's face as the entity spoke through her stolen lips. Let's make this viral. The ritual. Lara's studio had become a cathedral of dread. Salt water dripped from ring lights, and her good vibes only's neon sign now read goodbye only. The entity's presence saturated every lens, GoPros, iPhones, even the cracked smart mirror by the door. For million viewers waited, their comment section disabled by forces no algorithm could name. Ethan unzipped his sister's research, waterlogged pages spilling across the marble floor. The drowned eye doesn't want your death. It wants narrative collapse, your story rewritten until you're just content. Lara stared at the ritual page. Sacrifice a narrative of equal value. Her entire life was narrative, the orphaned girl who built an empire from makeup tutorials and trauma. To unravel it would mean vanishing from memories, receipts, even her own reflection. There's another clause. Ethan pointed to symbols etched in the salt-crusted margins. You can challenge it to a duel of curation. Outcreate its hunger. With what? She gestured to the encroaching tide. My camera gees underwater, and I can't even. Her Rolex buzzed. The countdown restarted, 59:59. Sacrifice. The entity manifested through her Monetized persona first. Lara's YouTube avatar flickered to life, a polished CGI version of herself, all symmetrical features and dead eyes. It addressed the audience in her voice, warped by sub-bass frequencies. Today's video is sponsored by Hereditary Guild. Use code DROWN20 for 20% off your impending doom. Ethan slammed a rusted film canister onto the counter. My sister's last upload. She tried to expose them. The footage showed a woman in a rain-soaked bunker, clutching a Zippo lighter. The Monroes aren't the only ones, she rasped. Every media dynasty made pacts. Hearst sold silence, Zuckerberg sold connection, but the drowned eye wants attention. It feeds on. The tape dissolved into eels. Lara's avatar glitched closer. Offerings, please. The broadcast. She switched cameras to manual. No filters, no sponsors, no clickbait thumbnails. Just a waterlogged influencer and a broken podcaster knee-deep in legacy. My grandmother lied. Lara faced the main lens, her reflection fracturing in real time. The crash wasn't an accident. Mom was delivering a sacrifice to the Bay, some indie filmmaker who asked too many questions. The entity recoiled. Comments poured in from banned accounts. At ClaraBowen_1912, tell them about the horses. At MargaretCole_1947, IT hates truth. At SamuelGray_1832, burn the contract. Ethan ignited his sister's Zippo. The flame cast shadows that stabbed at the entity's pixelated form. You want my narrative? Lara hurled the locket into the fire. Take it raw. She live-streamed every family secret, the NDAs, the staged tragedies, the midnight deliveries to coastal graves. The entity screeched through her studio speakers as subscriber counts plummeted. This isn't the deal. New deal. Lara wrenched off the Rolex. You starve. Resolution. Sunrise breached the horizon as the last viewer disconnected. The entity's form destabilized, a viral load of corrupted code, thrashing in its self-made spotlight. It's working! Ethan shouted. But the drowned eye had one final clickbait twist. Lara's avatar seized control, uploading a supercut of her confession with laugh tracks and puppy filters. Psych! You actually believed that? The entity regenerated, drunk on 7 million fresh views. Lara did the only thing left. She smashed her phone, shattered her mirrors, and faced the lens with nothing but her unfiltered scream. This isn't content. This is me. The feed cut mid-buffer. Epilogue. Weeks later, a Reddit thread debated whether Lara Monroe's channel was hacked or performance art. No bodies were found. The studio stood empty except for a VHS tape looping her final words. Ethan kept the melted locket. Sometimes, at 3:33 a.m., it played corrupted footage of Lara on a beach, rebuilding a sandcastle as waves receded. And in the comments section of The Void, a new notification appeared. at deathcast_live234 has scheduled a stream. But that's a story for another algorithm.